Hi, and good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to our Women in Tech Breakfast Seminar, hosted by us, Tieto Every. My name is Ida Lehtinen, and I will be with you this morning for our super inspiring session on going beyond customer experience. We are so happy to continue our collaboration with Women in Tech Network and hosting one of the breakfast sessions now for the fourth or maybe even the fifth time in a row. It's been so many wonderful years that I'm not even sure how many, but however, several years of great collaboration already. I know it's very early, but although I am happy to see that so many of you have joined us this morning, I just wanted to go through a few practicalities before we get started. So please note that if you want to have subtitles, you can turn on the live captions yourself. This you can do by accessing the drop-down menu with the three dots and choosing Turn Live Captions On. Also, our Q&A is going to be open throughout this session, so please feel free to drop in any questions, comments you have throughout the session, and we will address some of the questions later on in this event. Also, as you know, this seminar is marked with the word breakfast. Well, during this current situation that we are in, we are unfortunately not able to provide you all with a nice warm breakfast here live. And because, you know, a virtual cup of coffee seldom is as uplifting as you would like at this point in the morning, we thought that we would spend the money for a greater cause. So this year, for the second year in a row, we have now chosen to donate the money that we would have been using for the breakfast to a greater cause. And this year, in the spirit of empowering women, we have chosen to donate the money to Nice Hearts. Nice Hearts was established in 2001 with the aim to produce community-based activities for girls and women of different ages and backgrounds. Their mission is to enable girls and women to find their own place in society as its equal and unique members. And now, when we are talking about this continuing in the spirit of International Women's Day week and empowering women and diversity, I would also like to take this chance to highlight one of the amazing news from our side at Tieto Every as well. Last week, we have launched our Diversity and Inclusion Charter as a part of our new sustainability game plan, Upgrading Tomorrow. The Diversity and Inclusion Charter sets the ambitious goals for gender balance with an aim to reach equal representation of men and women in our workforce by the year 2030. Our target is to reach 40% of share of female professionals globally by the year 2026, and then 50% finally by 2030. And this is corresponding today of 29%. And the actions we plan to take include setting very measurable and transparent goals for gender balance per business area and identifying successors of both sexes for leadership positions, and looking at our recruitment practices, for example, through expanding the implementation of an anonymous gamified recruitment process, which I think is awesome. And we also aim to increase development and mentoring initiatives for female leaders, as well as awareness building across the organization. But now, let's give the stage to one of our own, very own superstars. Here to talk to you today about going beyond customer experience is Juliana Tobon. So please, let's give the stage to Juliana.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ida, for the introduction. So as Ida was mentioning, I will talk today about customer experience and going beyond customer experience. I will explain later what this means. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here and be able to tell you more about my experience and the things that I've been learning throughout these years. So regarding today's agenda, so first of all, I will tell you more about my story, first of all. Then I will explain to you about CX maturity levels. This is just my perception on how I think CX could be measured when it comes to maturity. Then I will explain what kind of requirements I think should be considered when we think about becoming more CX focused. And then I will finish this presentation explaining what is beyond customer experience. So, okay, so if we start first of all with my story, so who am I? I was born in Medellin, Colombia, so I'm originally from the other side of the world, but I've been living here in Finland since 2014, so it's been over 6 years living here in Finland. I have to say that, well, today we're talking about women in tech, but I actually have a very strong business educational background. So I have a bachelor in international business and then a master's degree in international marketing from LUT. But then basically how I started my career in tech was in 2016 when I started to work with marketing technologies. So I started to work with technologies such as Google Analytics or with marketing automation, CRM, etc. So I started to work with tech, I would say, in 2016. Then about more like, let's say, my free time activities. Well, part of that is also, I've been spending some time also with academic research. I published one academic paper about marketing automation. I have it there in the presentation. And then also about my free time, I actually love to dance. Not a surprise, like the fact that I'm coming from Colombia, but yeah, I love to dance. And I dance quite much bachata and salsa. So that's how I spend my free time. And then to tell more about myself and what I'm doing here at Tieto Every. So I'm part of the CX team. So we have here a team at Tieto Every that is called CX. I'm part of that team. And I would say basically I'm a combination of tech and business consultant here at Tieto. So what this means is that, let's say, typically when I talk with people, people tend to put other people in boxes, like whether you are from business or whether you're from tech. I would say that I find myself in the middle between business and tech. And this is basically just, I've been having this educational background in business, but also I've been complementing my career in tech. So I would say that I'm exactly in the middle, and I don't like to be either in one box or in the other one. But when I say that I'm in the middle of business and tech, that means that I can understand the business context. I understand, for example, the business needs, but then also I can get things done. So this means also that I can do things in different tools. For example, if I primarily work with Salesforce, so I can get the things done, for example, there. So yeah, I don't like to put people in a box, but that's why I consider myself to be in the middle. But so yeah, I mentioned that I'm working primarily here with Salesforce, but my role also here at Tieto is that I'm working as a project owner or as a project manager. And I would say that in this project where I'm working at the moment, there's been a big change in the last years. It's a project that I would say that started to be really focused on marketing, on the marketing side. But in the last months, it actually has expanded quite much to CX to cover different elements of the customer experience. And basically, some of my kind of analysis on why this project has expanded and how we have ended up talking about a project in CX and not only a project in marketing. Well, I think that has a lot to do with the evolution of marketing and how marketing has transformed in the past years. So if we think about marketing some years ago, and I think this is just the case for many other units in the companies, but I'm just going to talk about my experience from the marketing side. But if we talk about marketing, marketing used to be a silo, and marketing's role was basically just to focus on brand awareness. So all the activities that marketing was doing before, they were related to this concept of brand awareness and lead generation. So here we have that, for example, marketing was focused on website content management, social media and advertisement, and also email communications, content creations, etc. But the thing is that just like in everything, marketing has been transforming. But at that point, some years back, we saw that marketing was this silo and there was really little connection between marketing and other teams inside the company. So we were seeing that maybe some alignment was that happening there with IT and sales at that point, but I would say that marketing at that point was still facing these challenges of being in a silo and thinking only about the customer centricity from their own point of view. So marketing just working like towards the customer. We saw that kind of transformation, but however, it was still working as a silo. But then just as marketing has been transforming, then let's say that my project with this customer also started to transform. And then we started to see that the role of marketing switched, and from being only or as part of brand awareness to be more as this kind of, how I would call it, CX orchestrator. So what happened here is that when marketing started to transform, we saw that the roles from marketing started to change, and they went not only from being part of brand awareness and lead generation, but also we started to see that marketing started to focus on customer activation, engagement, and retention. And then what is interesting there is that I have seen that marketing has started also to align with different teams. And this is not only now talking about IT or talking about sales, but actually marketing has started to align with other teams that also have a role in the customer experience point of view. So I would say also from the data perspective, we see that before marketing was actually only focusing on marketing generated data. However, in the past years, I've noticed, or actually not even so many years, but it could be even like some months, but I see that marketing has started to use other type of data that is not only generated by marketing, but we can talk about, like, for example, install-based data or then transactional data, etc. So we can see that there's also a transformation from that point. And then, but I would say that even though there's a great alignment at this point between the different teams that I would say that form part of this customer experience, there's still a lot of work to do. There's been a big transformation, but I would say that there are still some challenges and there's no perfect alignment at this point. But then if we think about this kind of transformation and how marketing has transformed during these years, I would say that, of course, that's from the marketing standpoint, but then companies have also been transforming. So what this means, I have kind of said that there are 3 levels at least of maturity when it comes to customer experience, and those maturity levels, they are according to let's say that the more mature you are, the more customer engagement you have. But then I have divided them. This is only my division on the maturity levels, but I have divided them into 3. So we have first product focus, then we have customer center, and then customer experience focus. So I will explain now what each of these ones mean. So when we talk about product focus, so this was the starting point for actually quite many companies. I still believe that this was one level on the CX transformation. And even though at that point we were focusing on the product and not on the customer, I think that this was a great opportunity for companies to focus on developing their own offerings and also focusing on improving the processes, internal processes. But then when we talk about product focus, I think that was the time when most of the companies were thinking only about their products and they had really little understanding on the customer needs. Then we started to see some transformation, and actually that was not so long time ago, but that was some years back when we started to talk about this customer center. And at that point, companies started to realize that it was not enough to produce good quality products, but they needed to go a little bit beyond that. So they started to focus on the customer and focus on, first of all, discovering what are the customer needs, understanding them, and being able to adapt their offerings to that. So then we were seeing that the products and the services offered by the companies, they were developed according to those customer needs. And I think for these years, we have been talking a lot about this customer centricity. However, I think there's still one more transformation, because at that point, when we talk about customer centricity, I think there were like companies were having their own point of view to this topic. Like each team in the companies had their own point of view, and each team was tackling that from a different angle. So that's why I suggest that there's still one more maturity level, which is this customer experience focus. And in this one, I think that the transformation has been mostly that it's not only about what one team can offer to a customer or how one team sees to meet the customer needs, but it's more how we are helping the customer along the journey. So how the teams are aligning to be able to support the customer needs along the journey. And also what I see interesting here is that companies have been focusing on adding value at the different stages of the customer journey. So this is also part of this level of maturity. And if we think about why companies are actually now so focused on developing their customer experience, is because basically the products have been becoming more homogeneous. And that means, and that combined with the fact that customers are more price sensitive, customer experience has been becoming a strategic response to those challenges. So we can say that there was a point, especially when we talk about the product focus, when companies were starting to optimize all the processes, they were able to lower the cost and so on. But there was at some point that, let's say, they did everything they could. They were able to lower the cost as much as they could, but of course, that meant that you cannot go lower than that, and then you need to start figuring out, like, okay, what is then our competitive advantage? So then companies started to see how else to develop themselves, and then they realized that through the customer experience, they can not only offer high quality products, but also make the whole customer journey kind of a good journey for them, that the customers feel actually good about it. But then, so how to get there? How to become customer experience focused? How you can do that? How you can work on that from your company? So I have here some, what I say, like requirements, or how I think that companies could become more CX focused. I have divided them into different levels. So I will talk first of all about the individual. So what we can do as individuals to become more CX focused. Then what teams can actually do to become more CX focused, what can be done as a team. Then how organizations can become more CX focused. And then lastly, ecosystem. And I will explain what I mean about ecosystem later on. But then if we start with the individual, so I think one big challenge at the moment when we talk about becoming more CX focused is that on the individual level, I see that there's still this kind of attitude on, like, this is not part of my role, or people limiting themselves to the description of a role. And I'm not saying by this that that this means that there shouldn't be clarity on the roles as such, but I'm just suggesting, or I'm just proposing that there could be a better expansion on that. And where I see the improvement areas there is that as humans and as individuals, I think, or this is what I believe, but we should have more flexibility to adapt to changes. And especially if when we see that the world is changing so fast, we need to be flexible. And let's say that if there's a specific role that you had maybe 1 year ago, and that has been changing because the environment is also changing, I think we also should have that flexibility to adapt. Then also what I call like stretch to learn something new, even though usually when we start in a role, for example, we have already some experience, and some of us are new. I think the stretch to learn always something new, that's really important, so we can actually adapt. But then combined to that, I think also this has more to do with interpersonal relationships, but I think it's also the willingness to understand what the others do and to listen to others, because even though we are individuals, we also should have the possibility to also listen to what the other people are doing, to learn from them, to just learn what the other people are doing. And why I think this is basically because as humans, we have a lot of knowledge, and sometimes if we want to actually share that knowledge, to expand, to build this kind of alignment and break these silos, we also need to have that possibility of being able to listen to what the others do. And this basically takes us also to the teams. And I think as teams, well, I think one of the biggest challenge is that teams are not talking to each other, or that's kind of my experience with most of the companies. Teams don't talk to each other. And also there's some internal competition, which of course that creates some challenges when it comes to the customer experience. Where I see the improvement areas, for example, here is diversity. I think that's crucial, and this has been widely discussed by many people on diversity. But I think it's not only diversity on the skills, like people with, let's say, more technical skills than people more with business skills, etc. I don't think in that perspective also, but I think also cultural diversity. And this is also related to the fact that I believe that different cultures can bring different values, different personalities to a team, which I think it's something that it's an advantage, definitely. But also I think where teams can improve is that they can be also listening more to what the other teams are doing. So building this kind of connection or this kind of bridge between the teams. And this doesn't need to be overcomplicated. This can be something really simple. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking some other people questions and starting by planning a meeting, for example, scheduling a meeting with a random team. Maybe you haven't worked with that team before, but just listening to what they do, asking them questions. What do they do? Because after all, every organization and every team in an organization is delivering for the customer. So why not? There's of course a connection between all the teams. And here also related to competition, I think also usually, for example, companies have partners that are working with them, and I think it's also important to be aligning those partners and not creating competition between the partners, but actually bringing them together. I think that's also, for example, for us as in Tietoevry, I think that's also one of the main points, that we can cooperate with other teams. But yeah, I believe that teams need to be aligned from the people, processes, and technology. So of course, building that how to handle the people with the processes, and how to align also the different technologies. Then if we talk about the organization, so I still believe that the biggest challenge in organizations is the change. And this is because our organization, there's this kind of mindset of why to change if we are doing well. But I think, as I'm saying, there's changes on the environment all the time. So we do need to be adapting to those changes, and we need to be constantly looking for those changes. Where I see the improvement areas for the organization, first of all, I think organizations have a big responsibility to build a common vision. And this is crucial for the different teams to have this vision where they all understand what they should be achieving, what they should go. It doesn't necessarily tell all the steps or all the processes or all the steps in that path, but at least to know where you want to get, what's the end goal. Then also I see that important here with organizations is to align the targets and incentives. And basically at the moment I see that most of the organizations, they set targets for each team, for example, or for each unit or for each business area. And then it's really difficult to think about building a unified customer experience if you have different targets for each team. And of course, with this also comes the incentives, and this has been actually quite widely discussed by behavioral economics. but incentives play a huge role there. And depending on how you place the incentives, you can change quite much motivations of people. Then I have this idea that leaders should talk with each other. And again, this is on the idea that the more you talk with people, the more you realize how you can connect the dots, how you can support better your customers. But sometimes I see that some leaders are so focused on their own team or how they manage their own unit that they don't talk to each other. And this is also related to that sometimes there are internal competitions, but sometimes those are due to the targets. And then lastly, giving importance to each part of the business. So as I said, each area in a company is there and each area has a purpose on the customer experience. All of them are important, not only the sales team, for example, is important, but also everything that could be around selling a specific product. So I think just giving an importance and making feel people and the teams valuable, that could also be helping when it comes to aligning the customer experience in the organization. And then lastly, I have this ecosystem one. And this one, I think this is still the biggest challenge for the companies. So what is the ecosystem? So the ecosystem here, I'm talking about everything that is outside an organization, but it's part of the customer experience. So we are talking about suppliers, we're talking about dealers, distributors, agents, partners, etc. Everything that is outside the organization. This one, I see many companies struggling with this, and I think the biggest challenge is that because it is outside the organization, there's this mindset of that's not our problem, it's their fault. And for example, I lived this kind of a challenge recently when I was coming back from Colombia, and I was traveling to come here. Let's put it this way, that it's not that simple to get to Finland. So I had to travel with different airlines, and I bought the tickets with a specific airline, and this airline is part of an alliance. But even though they are part of this alliance, it actually, let's put it this way, that my experience was not that great because I had to travel with other airlines there. And it ended up that when I had a problem with my flight, when I was asking them like, hey, okay, I have this problem, they were not allowing me to travel. They were like, okay, but yeah, this is not our fault. You have to contact the other airline so they can help you with that. Sorry, we cannot help you. And that's the moment when you ask yourself like, okay, I bought the ticket with this alliance. Why then I need to be, or why everybody's saying to me that, okay, this is not our fault, you have to contact the other one. It was actually pretty tricky to solve. And I think that's showing that there are many things that still need to be solved there. So for the improvement areas, and again, I would say that this is quite new area still to be developed. So this is just my view on the improvement areas. And I would say that I'm not an expert here, but hoping to actually support my customers in the future with this. But first of all, this changing the mindset between competition and cooperation. It's really typical that when we talk about the whole supply chain, for example, there are some of them that are your partners, but they are also your competitors. So for example, we have dealers that are also your competitors. But here, I really think that there's no point to be seeing everyone as competition and tackling this like, okay, this is not our problem, go with them. This is just not part of us. Why? So I think that there should be this mindset that we think more about our partners as kind of cooperating partners and not as part of our competition. So I think everything could start like that. Then also I think it would help to have clearer roles and responsibilities. I think most of the companies, or this is again based on my experience, but there's no clarity or complete clarity on the roles and responsibilities. So everybody's trying to do their best, but everybody has their own point of view on how to tackle the customer. And lastly, here I have an internal mindset change. So changing from this, that's not our problem, to, hey, we can help you. For example, in this case, with the airline example I just gave there, I think it would have made a big change for me if the person there where I asked the support could have said to me like, hey, yeah, you need to do it with the other airline, but we can support you, sharing, for example, just with me the website, or sharing me where, or tips on how to proceed, or how to continue with that. I think that would have made actually a big change there, and it would have made my experience much better. So even though I would have loved that all the systems would be integrated and I would be just going to one single website and made all the changes to my flights, for example, from one single website, instead of having to figure out who was the responsible one, in this kind of case with the airline. I know that's kind of a target state, but I know that from the technical perspective, that's actually pretty challenging. And I know that this will take some time to get there, but I think that would have made a big difference, only just to say it, just to try to talk with the words and say to people like, okay, hey, we cannot help you, but we can figure out the solution with you. So this is again coming to this customer centricity, but expanded to the CX perspective. So thinking about like, how does that person feel, and how does that person see the challenge from their own perspective, and how to help the person with that. So I think that could be a solution to this big challenge when it comes to the ecosystem. So if I have to say, this mindset, it would be the most important aspect there, but I would say also these roles and responsibilities. Just having clarity that, okay, this is not, for example, in the case again of the airline, this is not our responsibility because you bought the ticket with airline X. So, but just please, we can help you with that, but you tackle everything with that. So that would have made a big difference there. But then if we think about what else is beyond CX, I think that, again, if we talk about this customer experience focus, this is one step ahead, and definitely this is taking us far from when we were talking only about product. However, I think that there's still a lot coming next. So even though some companies are at the moment doing quite well with their customer experience, I would say that there's still something else to come, and something else where companies should be focusing in the next years. But so I have actually not given a name to this yet, because I still don't know what would be a good name for that. And I know that this is actually quite new, so I will keep it like at the moment, just like us, to a name to be given in the future. But what I still believe is that the customer experience is not limited to customers, and this is a lot based on what I was discussing before about the ecosystem, but it's also about the experience of all the stakeholders that are part of delivering, or are part of like an organization, or about giving or selling a product, or providing a service. So I believe that there's still something else where companies should not only focus on what experience we are giving to the customers, but also what kind of experience we're giving, for example, to our suppliers, what experience we are giving to our employees. And I believe that the more we progress with the development of the customer experience, the more we will have to focus on those other stakeholders that are part of this chain. And the main reason is because it will get to a point that companies will need to have better engagement with their own employees, where they will need to have better engagement with their stakeholders, that the operations will go, for example, smoother, that they will be able to have better relationship with the suppliers. And this will mean that it won't be only for like achieving let's say employee loyalty, for example, or only for like achieving better cost when it comes to with the relationships with suppliers, but also because if we think about how we could improve the experience of the entire, let's say that if you have an employee and the employee is unsatisfied, you will see that will affect actually your customer experience. You will see it that they won't be, for example, providing such a good service to your customers, or they won't be having the best attitude, or they won't be proactive. So that's why I think that even though at the moment we focus quite much on what we are providing to a customer, we should also start keeping in mind what is around the customer that is not necessarily the customer as a stakeholder. And this also means like a transformation with how we see the competition, because and actually many from the academic side, many people suggest starting to see the competition more as your kind of cooperation. And this is mainly because I think in an ecosystem, each organization should find their own spot. And it's not about like how we are competing with this other company or how we are kind of pushing them down, but it's more about how we can improve or how we can actually both deliver to the customer. How can we make the experience better? So this is a lot like my reflection on the topic of competition. But yeah, so I still believe that there's something beyond customer experience or this customer experience focus maturity level. But yeah, as I said, I haven't given a name to that, but I'm quite sure that the more we progress with this topic, the more we will start talking about employee experience, dealer experience, for example, or partners experience, supplier experience, etc. But let's see then what kind of name will be given then in the next years. But yeah, so thank you for this, and then we can proceed now with the Q&A.
Okay, thank you so much, Juliana. I think that was a very inspiring presentation you just gave. So we have a few minutes to answer some questions that we have gotten in the chat. And then I would encourage for everyone to stay on the line until the end, because we still have one very exciting announcement to make before we close up this session. But okay, Bob, we got a question. So how to build a team of customer experience experts and developers? Should it be a separate team or a team with members from different teams? So for example, from marketing, sales, logistics, etc. How do you see this?
So when it comes to kind of the practical side, I don't think that the teams need to be set up in a way that they need to be combined, let's say from the organizational chart point of view. I think it's sometimes better to form those teams according to projects, and those teams, depending on the project, you can then form the teams and you can have multiple roles there. I would believe that if there's a specific project in the company going on, I would actually form the team with different people from other teams. And we have actually been working with that with one specific customer. And I think that sometimes some people find it that okay, but it's just that we won't have many things in common and so on. But actually the more you progress in the team, the more you see that, okay, maybe I have not considered this point. And this is basically because the new people bring new perspectives to that. So then you start to see how the project actually expands and how it can take different shapes. So I would actually align it more, or I would create this kind of team, diverse team, when we think about the project. So then people understand that there's a specific goal and everybody understands better what is needed from their side.
Yeah, good. And then we have a question about, do you think that the change should start from inside out or from the other way around? So when you were discussing the individual team, organization and ecosystem, do you think it starts from the individual, or should the change start from the ecosystem the other way around? So,
well, I wouldn't say like it needs to start exactly from one side or the other one. I think some individuals would be definitely more willing to start doing this kind of change, and they will be understanding that more easily than other people. But sometimes other people also need to see how it actually starts developing, so they can also start changing themselves. So I would say that it can be both ways.
Yeah.
And of course, there will be different personalities, and there will be other people who will see how the other people are like setting up an kind of good example to the other individuals. But then I wouldn't say that it needs to be one single way, but it can be actually both ways. So kind of showing how it could be done as an individual, but also seeing how the other or how the organization,
exactly.
for example,
so kind of everything can influence each other in a sense. Yeah, makes sense. Then we got a question. Hi, Juliana. In your experience, what is a good way for a user experience designer to learn about and get into customer experience?
So, sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, in your experience, what's a good way for someone that's working with user experience as a user experience designer to learn about and get into customer experience? Do you have any tips on if you are interested in getting into the area?
I think user designers actually, user experience designers, they are already kind of part of the customer experience, but I would say that the best way that, or the tips that I could give to a person who has that kind of specific role is to be that willing to listen to what the other ones are doing. So you can get the perspective not only like from what your current role is, but you can also listen to what the other ones are doing. So then I think it's just that role, I would say that it's kind of perfect in the way that if you have been already working on developing the user experience, then it's more for you to learn also what else or how else you can actually expand your area. So I think that would be a lot about listening to other people and learning from other roles. For example, learning more about how to develop the user experience from the marketing standpoint or from the sales standpoint. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and maybe now discussing kind of how to get into customer experience, kind of what are your tips for someone who has no experience in it? How should you start working with it? How did you get into it, and what are your tips for someone interested in it?
Yeah, so I would say that my expansion went quite fast from marketing to let's say this topic of customer experience, and most of it was just basically going to other people and asking them, hey, what are you doing? What do you do? So for example, in this case, and I'm talking about a specific project because I'm working in a specific project at the moment with a customer, but it was a lot about like, they told me that, okay, there are other teams actually working with this customer. And what I did was just send them a chat, like a message in Teams, and say to them like, hey, what do you do for this customer? How can we help them better? How can we both figure out like better solutions for the customer? So that took me out of that, let's say, marketing silo, where I started to be checking like, okay, hey, these people are doing that. Oh, but this is, of course, everything's connected to the customer and everything is like related to each other. So it was more about like listening to what they are doing and figuring out together how we can solve.
Yeah. Do you have any great examples of companies or cases where you would see a company implementing customer experience in a good way? Something that you would kind of highlight as a star?
Like good examples. Well, I have to say that with this particular customer, I would say that they are definitely becoming a good example and they're setting a good standard, let's say, there, because they have been, I have noticed, for example, every time that we are working a project with them, they are involving every time more and more stakeholders there. So we are not really now talking only about marketing stakeholders. I see that there are now lots of people involved from different roles. So I would say that definitely this customer example is a good one in that way, because I see that every time we take different angles, we take different perspectives. into the project. And I'm quite sure that the customer experience or the kind of how the customers are living this is starting to see some results of this alignment in this particular case.
And you were discussing that kind of moving forward, looking at customer experience from even a broader perspective, where you taking kind of the stakeholder view. We got a question about should we measure in the future also experience from other stakeholder groups than customers, and how do we do this? As we are customers for suppliers, would they rank us as high as possible not to lose us? So how do we measure kind of customer experience from the perspective of other stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a super good question. And I've been super interested in that topic. And I do believe that working, for example, with suppliers or with dealers, it's really important to start also measuring the success with them. And there are actually different academic articles describing this, but it's also about, well, they describe it more from the perspective on how to manage the control of the touch points. If we think about it, they also have part of the touch points on the customer journey. And there are actually some companies at the moment, and these are like a little bit more like the ones that I would say that they are more on the mature level, where they are starting to discuss how to manage those touch points that are outside of your own organization. And of course, if we think about, if you have really clear roles and responsibilities between the different players, then you can set, of course, targets, and you can say that, okay, well, we want to then achieve this, and then we should also say that, okay, we can measure this specific touch point. But I would say that most of the companies, unfortunately, are not in that stage yet.
I think we have still time for one question before wrapping up. We have a question about data. So does the increased use of customer data need a push from a dedicated data lead, or is it possible to achieve in some other way?
So if it needs to be from...
if it needs a push from someone who is a dedicated data lead, or can it be achieved in some other way? So if we have an increase of customer data, do you think someone needs to, we have to have a dedicated lead to
Well, the thing is that as I was describing when I was explaining about the individual, and the biggest challenge is that most of the people, unless if it is stated in their own role, if it is there, they will do it, but if it's not there, they won't do it. So then I would say that it would need a person definitely that would have that responsibility, for example, of like unifying the data or creating this customer single view. That would be important that somebody would have that, because I know that even though I would love that many people will take actually the responsibility on the data, that it won't be only one single person responsible for that. I know that when it comes to the practical level, I know it will be a limitation, because then everybody will be like, okay, but yeah, we are responsible for this, and they will create silos again. But then I think that person could be then working as kind of helping everyone to unify it. But that person will definitely need to have good experience on how to work with different teams and how to listen to the other team needs, because otherwise this can end up in that this person will be maybe focusing on only one single team and not understanding the other team's needs. And I think that's especially challenging for marketing, for example, that then marketing is left on a side, and then people are just waiting that, okay, maybe marketing is the last one. Just for example, that's kind of what can happen as well.
Yeah. I think we don't have time for any more questions, but I mean, super interesting hearing about this, and I'm sure that there are many people who would like to continue the discussions, and probably a good way to do this is connect on LinkedIn with you, and also, of course, follow us on social media channels, and we can continue the discussion. But as I promised before we start this Q&A, we still have one very interesting thing to tell you. So maybe if we get one more visual up on the screen, before ending this session, we would like to inform you of something interesting coming up. Do you, Juliana, wanna take this? So
yeah.
Maybe if someone is interested in customer experience.
Yeah. So I'm actually really happy to say that at the moment we are hiring people in our CX team. So a great opportunity for those of you who are interested to be working in projects where we are helping our customers to connect the dots, as I say it always. So we are actually looking for different kind of people. And again, this is like talking about the diversity. We're looking for different roles here. So we are looking for designers, project managers, customer leads, and many others. So I would like, of course, you to come and check those. And I would be really happy to have new colleagues joining us soon. So we will be sharing then a link where you can see some positions that we have now open, but there are more new opportunities coming soon. So I invite everyone to stay tuned to those.
Yeah. So we'll post the link in the chat for you to see, and also, of course, you can find more information on our website and in our channels. But yeah, thank you to everyone for listening in this morning. I know it's been a very early morning, but the sun is shining, and we're very happy to continue the discussions with you in all our channels. So please stay connected and let's be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.